Most exciting part of the meeting. Yeah, we are. There we go. We're on. Right. Evening, everybody. Welcome to the August meeting of the Buckinghamshire Council Planning Committee. We are live on YouTube. We always have a public session at the start of these meetings, which would last for a maximum of 15 minutes. We do have a few members of the public here tonight. Mr. Goldsmith and Dr. Natali, good evening. Thank you for coming along. Between you, we have 15 minutes to 7.5 each, or I believe not split it, but they're here to talk about the brethren meeting, which is planning application number 6 on this agenda tonight. So, Mr. Goldsmith, I believe you'd like to talk first. Yeah, if you could just stop.
No worries. Well, thank you very much. I suppose this is a new world to me. Basically, I've obviously got a lot of wonderful neighbours because I've lived in Vale Drive for probably the last 2.5 years. Kuros being one who sort of put me up to speed in terms of like the applications and things that have gone through. You know, over that time since the brethren, I think probably 10-12 years ago, converted what was one garden into a brethren meeting hall and sort of subdivided the plot which we now live. So I guess the context of everything I've got to say is that, of course, I suppose I've moved into this property and sort of got married last year, and we very much viewed this as a house where we would begin a family, which is kind of on the radar for us next year. So you don't do so much research when you move into a property. Like it's obviously a lovely house. I suppose everything that's come before us to this point and been approved, I understand retrospectively, before was done so, I suppose, by the previous owners, which are members of the brethren themselves. So everything that happened there stood to be in their favour and for their benefit, and directly benefited them for a number of years. Whereas what we've got now and everything else I'll talk about, any additional points of Kuros reference and everything you've no doubt seen from everybody else, is just in the context of I know there's a few people that do walk to the meeting hall, but in no one in direct proximity is going to be negatively affected by this. It's only positively affected by this. Sorry, they're only going to be negatively affected by this. And probably the few points that stand out at the moment are like the cosmetic effects. So from the bedroom window that we've got at the moment, we've of course got the bird's eye view of the development when they put up the building before the shed, before applying for the application, and it has been lengthened, it has been heightened, and it is now a long, essentially corrugated iron or whatever, corrugated steel roof, you know, on what was grass and previously a very small shed. So it is different. We did watch some 16-year-olds just turn up without any notice and basically knock it down, almost pulling guttering off of their actual meeting hall before doing that, which was quite interesting. And cosmetically now, we're in our living room, but you can actually see that from the ground floor in our house over the fence. And it's there. You've probably got 2 meters of the top corner of it. You can now see from the living room that didn't exist before. So that's just adding context to the cosmetic effect I think everybody else has sort of brought in and said that it is larger from the road. Some of the pictures they put in to support the application have actually been taken at different angles. So actually on the pictures it looks smaller than it is if you're there in practice. I'm sure a lot of you have walked past it. So there is that from the negative cosmetic view in terms of blending into the rest of the areas, and I think they've taken some pictures of some wooden fencing, which I don't really get how it's relevant, but other people have made that point. On the family side of things, the cesspit or the septic tank or whatever it's going to be at the moment seems to change all the time. It looks like it's going down septic tank route. Wherever that's located is literally meters away from our garden, like just a few of them. So if I plan on having a family next year, which is on the cards for us, anyway, it's designed to go into the ground, which is never amazing. If it goes wrong, like there's going to be small children genuinely like meters away from that. And it was all one garden, right? It was a space that was all one garden. It's now not. That was a brethren choice to go in and subdivide it. But it's not their kids that are there anymore, which would be open for them to make that choice if they wanted to, for the greater good and possibly the intensifying of use of the meeting. It'll be ours. You know, we moved in. I don't mind what they do now at all, so I'm not protesting that. It's the scaling up and the stuff that what you couldn't possibly have done before we got here, you know, that we haven't necessarily got the power, and maybe you can help with doing something about. And, you know, that's just a massive like negative element that you'll have in the garden that's not going to really help anybody else as children in that space. So that's definitely one of our concerns. And yeah, I'm just trying to think where I was going with the other points basically, but those are definitely the main ones. The congestion. Actually, I spoke to Scott Douglas, probably the interesting point, after the application committee in the name of One Mallard Drive as opposed to the meeting hall. That was on the 4th of August. He was in the driveway. I don't know if that was the time he was permitted to use and do any work on it. Probably not. But I went and spoke to him about why they're planning to put in this toilet, basically at that point. And it was a range of reasons saying, oh, we've been trying to do it for a while anyway. You know, people have been asking for it. Oh, but actually we're planning on possibly selling, actually relocating to a different meeting hall next year anyway. So that obviously doesn't add up with why you would choose now to be the moment to invest in that. Why would you invest if, as they stated, the membership is possibly declining? The floor print is now larger. Again, it's not conducive to scaling down of the membership or declining brethren membership in the area. It just doesn't add up. And it certainly doesn't point towards, yeah, just scaling down. So intensifying is my concern. Of course, the septic tank being literally a few meters away, touching our garden is the main one. And I think a lot of other people have referenced traffic as well. If it goes up, if the toilet allows more people to come in, or if it widen points towards having more people in there, it's just going to exaggerate that. So anything that anybody's already put in beforehand about the traffic at parking levels on Monday and Sunday mornings, I mean, mostly Sunday mornings, I just hear lots of doors. It's just a lot of car doors. Like, you never actually hear any noise. They're doing their business inside, and that's fine. But it's certainly not going to be something that reduces. You know, it's only going to get more. It's only seemingly leading to people being more alienated or into another situation. Really. So,
thank you. That's your 7.5 minutes. Spot on.
we need to practice.
Thank you, Dr. Matadi. Yeah. What we'll do when you've spoken, we'll just ask. And we've got the questions.
Thank you very much for having us here. Yeah, just to follow on from Steph, obviously I live sort of on 7 Mallard Drive, which is the rear garden, if you like, and our garden is lower than theirs, which means the issue of the septic tank is quite a serious one. If things start leaking, it's going to come our way. When they started, they in fact started digging on 13th of April. And they it's literally, well, they dug one hole, which now currently they're using as a soak away for the rainwater from the roof of the, if you like, this shed. And I don't know what construction that soak away is, because on 29th, when we were having conversations across the fence, and then I went over and I spoke with them directly, they sort of very quickly started filling it. So I don't know whether it's actually properly constructed, whatever it is, I have no idea. But then they also dug another hole, which was about a couple of meters from our fence, and they were going to put the septic tank in there. That was what that's what they originally said. And then when we challenged them, it was on the, effectively on the 14th, they sort of stopped digging. Then on the 29th, they started sort of, when they were putting the rest of the thing up, they sort of said, oh, we're not going to build the toilet anymore, we're going to fill this one up. And when I spoke with them at lunchtime, it was, went across and spoke with a family friend of ours. He said, oh, why don't you go and talk with them? So I went to spoke with them. They said, no, they're not going to put anything up, which of course, now they've gone totally against it. So all of this has been quite stressful for myself, for my family, and so on. And the challenge, of course, is the fact that I think their plan is to intensify. That what they say and what they do are two somewhat different things. And given that they're going to intensify, the only way to stop it is by not allowing the space that they have is to grow. is to say, okay, you had the shed, okay, you go back to the same shed as your entrance, and that's it. No additional space, because this way you can control it. Maybe you can't control it to 25, but you can control it. Whereas any other way, I don't think there is a possibility of control. Then, of course, is the issue of that it's ugly, it's made the place industrial looking and all that, but you know, that's a different, those are all written down. So yeah, those are the main issues I wanted to say.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Has anyone got any questions for either Mr. Goldsmith or Dr. Batali? Lisa.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks. You mentioned about the parking and like, you know, the doors on a Sunday, I think you said, or Monday. What is the actual traffic like around there on their meeting days?
There's a bit of footfall, and there's probably something like, I'm going to go 10, 12, maybe 15 cars, but I think some of them park further around towards the corridor, so it's past 3 and 5. You have like 4 cars in the driveway, and directly opposite that, up to the drop curb of Bristol Manor, that we call the Royal Road, and roughly where that fence was asked to be taken down by whatever it is, maybe number 4, number 6. They'll park up to that drop curb as well. So that's what it is at the moment. It's largely just a lot of doors closing at specific times. You have a few people that walk past. But it's just a concern, like, you know, the footprint is now large, it's called easy going unit, doesn't say our membership less me.
Because that's one thing that we were kind of promised, is that it wouldn't have an effect on the neighbourhood when they first came to us with these plans, is that we were assured that it wouldn't have a detrimental impact on the residents that live there. So it's interesting that it actually is. I live opposite a primary school, so I do appreciate the issues that you have with it.
Yeah, I'm expecting traffic in there for it.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Anybody else? No, well, thank you very much for you come to speak to us. You're welcome to stay, and what I'll do, if members are agreeable, we will move that item to follow immediately after apologies and declaration of interest. Is everyone agreeable to that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Right, let's move on with the meeting then. So first of all, apologies for absence.
Councillor Schaefer.
Councillor Schaefer, thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Anyone have any declarations of personal or prejudicial interest under consideration on this agenda?
Just on my usual one, that I occasionally get to sit on a plan application in Buckinghamshire Council. I use the word occasionally, as we haven't met, I don't think, to discuss a Buckingham application since 2020. I've discussed other applications, but for some reason we never have a public meeting to discuss a Buckingham application.
Right, thank you, Robin. I think we can take that on board. Right, so as we just said, we will move item 6, planning applications next. So this is Brethren Meeting Hall, Mallard Drive. It's a single-storey side extension and proposed toilet with septic tank, and this is all retrospective. The background to this is that originally they did get planning permission, as Catherine has said on her notes here. They got permission back in 2016 to do this work, but the septic tank would have been in the drive, hard concrete drive in front of the garage. The history after that was, as we heard from our friends, this work started over the Easter bank holiday weekend. We very quickly picked it up, but it's too late by then. People in Aylesbury had already decamped, and it wasn't until the following Tuesday that enforcement came to have a look by which way work was underway. They've now put in another application for this, but the septic tank, of course, is on the back lawn. The agent who made the application said, amongst his conclusions, the trust were of the view that as a replacement lobby, minor building permission was not required, which is somewhat disingenuous, as they applied for exactly the same thing in 2016. They said the works have been sensitive to the surroundings and neighbours, do not result in any adverse harm. in terms of scale or visual impact. And they believe the works are acceptable in terms of design, amenity, and complying with policies BE2 and BE3 of the Vale of Aylesbury Plan. There have, as of this afternoon, been 18 objections to this on the website, including both Mr. Goldsmith and Dr. Methadi. And all the objections have very much the same reason, that this is within 15 meters, sorry, within 30 meters of the public sewer. And the question is, why are they putting a septic tank in and not using the public sewer? There's a whole list of questions. Yeah, but if members would like to have a say on this, who would like to start? Carolyn from the Buckinghamshire Society.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, well, you pointed out quite correctly that if there's a sewage system within 30 metres, then it should be connected to it. That seems a fairly obvious point to bring forward again, where they're proposing to put it or have put it. And secondly, we were very surprised to see them quote BE2 and BE3, because it seems to completely ignore the fact that it is does not respect the physical characteristics of the site, nor does it protect the immunity of existing residents. So on those 2 points alone, we would object.
Thank you. Anyone else? Not at the moment. I would just make the point that the planning law changes on October the 23rd, which will say that you must use the public sewer drainage if you are within 30 metres of it. At the moment, it's we're practical, but this will actually be mandatory. You must use it. Thank you. In that case, I'm going to propose that we.
Martin,
I'm sorry, Martin.
Yeah, no. Just on carrying on the septic tank bit, it also says that it should be used for domestic use only, and the whole is maybe a bit of a grey area whether it's domestic or not, but it's my view not really domestic, is it? So they lose on that point as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just checking.
Anthony wants to.
Anthony?
I'm wondering what the criteria is for putting such an item as I could be specific, I'm sure it's standard names, about the soil structure in the surrounding area, with the thought of how quickly, let's call it water, actually would drain away, and also what provision there is, like French drains and that sort of thing, to accommodate that. But I was wondering about the soil structure in the gardens, or your gardens, I guess, and whether there's a lot of clay or you see my point.
You've done a geology report or anything, have they?
Yeah, but I certainly, as a speed of dispersion is quite thin.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, like the rules stated here apply after October. What are the rules at the moment up until that point?
Well, it's quite difficult to sort out.
Right.
Not knowing whether this is a domestic.
Well, it's not, is it?
It's not.
Really. It can't be domestic. If it hasn't got bedrooms, it's not domestic.
Yeah.
No, but it's the whole reason for retaining the garage doors, which have been bricked up along inside. I mean, they're just completely cosmetic. And the apparent shed porch was to retain its domestic appearance.
It doesn't mean it's domestic,
It
though.
doesn't make it, but the use of the building is not domestic.
Domestic appearance,
Yeah.
then we can't really sort of say.
Presumably they've got permission to change of use from a domestic dwelling to a place of religious worship at some point.
Our two presenters live each side of this, one on one the other. They're both on main sewage.
Yeah.
Therefore, there is probably a pipe in between.
Yeah.
You've got to it's got to be the sludge has got to be removed at least once a year, regardless of
quantity. And doing that from the back garden is going to be quite difficult, because there's shrubbery on that green space that's actually on the main drive. Putting an elephant trunk through and doing this really, apart from the smell, you know, it's just the whole.
It's
thing
inappropriate, isn't it, I think?
John,
Yeah, just picking up, I'm just wondering, what is the process of removing the sludge from it? Because presumably they just put a pipe into it and then take the pipe out to the road. But I can't, this feels like overdevelopment in the end, I think. It's ridiculous. I don't think it's fair on the people who live nearby for this, what's effectively a garage, be turned in, well, to continue in this expanded way. I think it's really wrong.
well, also made the point that the applicants make much of the point that this is a brownfield site, which it quite patently isn't.
No. Sorry? Well, they will be, they're going to send us back. Chris?
It's quite patently back garden. So I am going to propose that we oppose this.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And because this could have big repercussions on other developments in Buckingham, that we should call this in and it should go to committee.
definitely.
All the reasons that we've discussed tonight.
No, Anthony has to second. isn't he?
Seconded by Anthony. All those in favour? That's unanimous, exception of Robin.
Abstention. Can you say, now you've decided, Chairman, can you write to me with what you want for the call?
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to follow it up with what you said.
So gentlemen, what we've done, we're opposing this. We're going to ask the Buckinghamshire Council Planning at Aylesbury to call it in, so we have a chance to hear this in front of the committee. Whether or not they'll accede to that.
Well, if
remains to be
they're
seen.
minded to refuse, they would need to.
Yeah, but certainly because of the past history of this, you know, where they were quite specifically told if they wanted a septic tank, it should go in the front. And they just did all this off their own back later. So that's where we are at the moment. So thank you very much for attending tonight. I know you're speaking for everyone on Freefields, Tudor Meadows, whatever it's called there. But thank you for attending. You're welcome if you want to hear any more of the meeting tonight, but that covers yours. Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers, bye.
Thanks.
Right, we move on to the minutes of the planning committee held on the 19th of June. We put forward
July. Not June.
19th of June, yeah, we haven't had the July ones yet.
Wow.
Everyone's happy with those, we'll put those, send those to council. Buckinghamshire Council Members, item 4, to discuss a method of including the town council in section 106 discussions at an early stage. Now, this may be continued when the CIL, Community Infrastructure Levy, is. Yeah, now we did invite all our ward councillors, all 6 of them, from the Buckingham North. We understood Councillor Cornell was going to attend tonight to speak, which is not there, but fortunately we do have.
I have to declare
That's
that,
the Dutch.
the advice of the acting legal officer, I have to declare that I'm a Buckinghamshire councillor. I'm sitting here at this moment as a Buckinghamshire councillor. So as for the lack of any other person willing to come and talk to you, I apologise, it's me.
We can always rely on you, Robin.
So what I think, because you once tried this before, and then we delayed it to come back again, that we really need to, so ask me questions and I'll try to tell you no lies on this, and I'll try and get something constructive out of this.
Well, let me just outline why we're doing this. We found ourselves in something of a quandary over the last 2 or 3 years because we've been left out of all section 106 discussions. One of the major ones, of course, being health provisions. It's a fact that since 2011, the date of the last national census, which showed Buckingham's population as 12,043, we've had a further built or about to be built, a further 1,930 houses. And we have not at any time been asked for our input on any agreements, health provisions, or indeed any of them. We've got health provisions, we've got schools, we've got sport and leisure. So far, Buckinghamshire Council Planning has taken it on itself to decide what we want, rather than talking to us. Under the Town and Parish Charter, which they published last year, they should be involving us. And we want our ward councillors, all 6 ward councillors who represent Buckingham, to fight for us on this and to put forward our case that Section 106 agreements should be agreed early in any development. Robin.
I have no difficulty with the question, and I share your disquiet at the responses we've got. I think I'm going to suggest a way forward, but I'm with this to get some purchase and clarity on it, but I want to hear everybody else before I suggest that, and then you can agree whether you think that's a way forward.
I'd like to hear your suggestion.
Lisa?
I'd like to hear your suggestion.
I'd like to hear a suggestion as well.
That's 2. Anyone would like to hear it? Robin?
This needs to be discussed in the public domain, in the sense that any response that you get needs to be clear, it needs to be precise, and it needs to be accurate, reflecting, as the chairman says, the parish charter. So what I'm proposing to do, with your agreement, is to draft a very precise written question, and I'll either choose one of 2 portals to take it to. One will either go to the September cabinet meeting, and I get to talk to the troops about the concerns and express your concerns. Or secondly, I leave it within written questions for the council meeting in September, because we've got time to draft it, and better to get these things crystal polite based on whatever, and then get a public response in the public record, which you can all read, and that's a public document. And then we see where we go, because the first question you ask is never the real question you ask. It's always the second question that comes out of the question you've asked. So I think that's how I would deal with this. And what I would do is, when that question is agreed, I would send it, once it's agreed word, and I'd send it back to the officers of this council, because it won't be in the public until it goes on the agenda. And at the point it goes on the agenda, I will do the courtesy of copying it to the other 5 members who are unable to be here tonight, as for whatever reason. So they know the question's been asked, if you agree that that's what you want me to do. I could give you lots of long platitudes, and you've got a long meeting. I know the chairman's on his 3rd meeting today, and so is many other people. So that's why I'm trying to be cut to the chase. I don't know whether you think that's a way forward.
I'll be very happy to help you draft the letter, Robin.
Yeah.
Because
The members will be happy that.
we'll write it down, and we'll work
with Catherine.
and we'll work on it so that I don't miss
I
anything.
propose that we accept Councillor Suchbury's very kind offer.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Everyone in agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah, just show of hands. Thank you very much.
I'll reinstate my standing orders now. Coming back now with a different hat on as a town council.
Welcome to the meeting.
Where have you been?
Thank you very much. Right, we can move on to number 5, Buckingham Neighbourhood Plan, Vale of Aylesbury Plan, Buckinghamshire Local Plan. To receive any update?
I haven't been anything here.
Right, so what I can say is we have had another working group meeting tonight, looking at further advancing, and what we're heading towards is at the end of this month. There will be, sorry, end of September, there will be first of the public consultations in the community centre, which we'll put to the council on September the 11th for approval, and you'll be, the full council will be told what items are going to be up for discussion.
Just to say, thank you for our officers who were present and the chairman chairing that meeting. I think it was a good meeting. I think we aired some of our deep concerns around these matters, and but I would ask that, because we are sitting here as councillors and making those decisions, that we do write to those members of the public and societies who attended and thank them for their input in that meeting to get us to the start where we recommend to council to go out to consultation, which would be a council decision. But I think it's important that they've put a lot of work in, that we actually thank them.
Yeah, thank you. I think, just to put it in perspective, since January, tonight was the 16th meeting.
That's why, yeah.
The workshops had, so a lot of people have put a lot of time and effort into it. I wholeheartedly endorse what Robin said. Thank you to all the officers and local societies who helped out, as well, of course, all the councillors who did. Thank you. Nothing else on that. We can move on to item 6, North Bucks Parish Consortium. There is a paper, Appendix A, which Councillor Anthony Ralph has provided with. But Anthony, you've got a report on the meeting we had just this last week.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Chairman. The NBPPC, as you know from previous reports that I've made, are quite keen, particularly through the chair, Patrick Hardcastle, to try and improve the relationship between Buckinghamshire Council and the parishes when it comes to planning matters and working together, and trying to work on a pretty neutral basis so that everybody gets something positive out of it on all sides. And this culminated in a letter being sent to Peter Strachan recently by Patrick Hardcastle, and then consequently he was invited to have an hour's meeting at Gateway with Peter and also with Steve Bambrick, and he was kind enough to invite me along as well. So off we went on the 9th. We had the meeting. Steve was not very well, so he came in on Teams, but their IT kit's pretty good down there, so it really was like having them in the room. And what we found was that they seemed reasonably open to at least talking about the issues that we had raised using the position paper. And the upshot of it was that everybody was nice to each other, and they promised to come back with a written response to the position paper, and they volunteered the fact that they would like to have another meeting. We didn't ask for one, they volunteered. Significant, we both thought. And really that was the extent of it, and the position paper really shows how we tried to tackle it, because initially Pat had sent round a note to everybody on all the parishes in the consortium, and people are given lots of examples, including reference numbers and so on and so forth. And both Pat and I thought that the way forward was not to batter Buckinghamshire Council with loads of examples. It was much more important to try and get the strategic general idea across that we want to work on the same side. And so hence the position paper as was finally written. We did have all the questions in case we needed some ammunition. So, not being totally naive here. Nevertheless, as far as it went, I thought it was pretty good. And as soon as we have more information, I'd be delighted to report to you in future meetings.
Thank you for attending. It's very significant that it's face to face.
Yes, it was.
So, Robin, Wendy.
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you, Anthony and Anthony Ralph, for attending these meetings, bringing back the information which is highly valuable. In your paper, you said about the assistance of SIL and section 106 and changes are afoot. Having questioned them both in district, shadow authority and Buckinghamshire Council about when SIL would come in. It appears, to all intents and purposes, that the council is looking at a way of moving to seal, or there is another form of, in particular, a sooner pace. The detail of how they're going to do that isn't there because they haven't got it. They also, I understand, because I don't know whether I'm going to be doing it or not yet, I volunteered to, they're going to be combining the Health and Scrutiny Committee and the Growth and Development Committee to look at contributions to health provision and how they can improve that. I'm not sure whether that's come to you in your meetings, and I haven't had an invite yet to join the merry band of warriors who are going to look at this. I've offered my earthwine attention to it. I'm not sure whether they'll want it, but they've been offered it. And so I think those two things, that one paragraph that you encapsulate that, and I think if anything, I think that with agreement that we should seek clarity on their purpose around these things, if only either through Anthony at the next meeting or through this council asking additional questions, as they've stated they're very keen to work and whatever, because I'm not sure what will come out of that. But from a Buckingham Town Council's point of view, with floating applications pending and applications, probable applications that may come in between now and the time that either the Neighbourhood Plan or Buckinghamshire Plan comes in, still makes a huge financial difference to Buckingham Town Council, as we have a made neighbourhood plan and would be entitled to 25% of the uplift if it's sealed. So I do think that's something that we don't need to mention the fiscal thing, but establish their point of origin with these discussions.
Thank you, Roy. John?
Just to mention that Val are meeting with the Cabinet Lead, Councillor Hussain and Simon Garwood on the 13th of August with a variety of discussion topics, not a million miles away from the EVP. So they're getting it all in plans at the moment. Yes. And when I'm going to be at the meeting, so I'll report back on that meeting and see where we get. The Shire Council are getting lots of pressure. It seems to me it's like the parish and town councils just saying, what you're doing is too remote. You need to listen to us more and involve us more. Just simple that. It's not political, it's just practicality. You know.
Thank you. Anyone else? Maybe in that case we can move on to number 7, action reports. You see, I did
like propose whether we, I was making a proposal which was to move those discussions on in research to whether the two groups they're setting up and how they're going to do that and whether they're going to move to seal. I was hoping that we might agree in action either by asking Anthony and John in their responsibilities to follow that up remotely, or whether we agree to follow it up ourselves. Because we think that information is going to be key to how we look at other things.
all we're doing on this item tonight is just receiving a report. There's no proposal to be made from it, Anthony.
Yeah, not to be difficult about this. I feel bounded by my position on this, which is as a member of the NBPPC, and it's working collaboratively and collectively with them. And I'm a representative from Buckingham Town Council, but I've got to sort of subsume that to some degree into working with the grain of what they wish to do. And obviously, if I can raise these things, I will, but I wouldn't like to be bounded by anything voted by this town council at this point, and just assume that I will do my best to
That's
put
fine,
on.
Anthony.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I think we all know that you do your best.
Happy with that.
Thank you very much. So any other point there? So we will move on to the action reports, action list, item 7. Just flipping through Lacehill Medical Centre, Town Clerk has establish more on the status of the section 106 money, which basically is no longer there, as we have been told before.
Can I just say,
Yes.
although the screen is playing out,
Yeah.
we do continue to be live. It may be that I need to turn the screen off.
Turn it off.
Yeah.
In case anybody.
We don't leave it ourselves. So. Steve, is there anything you want to add on the Maidstone section 106?
No, I don't think so. I know that, I mean, it may well be that the cabinet's made to do some, follow up some of the actions on the report. But with the clerk's recent absence,
Yeah.
it's been difficult to move forward on most of the actions.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Section 106 matters we've already dealt with agenda before. Town hall signage, enforcement.
Chairman,
Sorry,
section 106 matters, Chair, because I just.
we've already dealt with that under section, under item.
Well, that was more about strategy, wasn't it? This is more about tipping the law.
What is what we talked about this, we invited Robin to put all that forward.
Yeah, but that was about going forward. Mine's about this particular item,
Right?
which is about, can we write to the Shire Council
Oh, that one, yeah, the meeting, yeah.
to ask them about precisely why the timing was such that the skate park is out of use for the whole summer holidays. Just ask them why, because I think the local public is due a statement to explain to their teenage sons and daughters.
Could we wait with the skate park upgrade is on here? Could we wait till we get there?
Sorry, where is that?
It's on page 3. At the bottom.
Yeah.
So if we just do the town hall signage first, we have reported this, we can't open the case file because the portal doesn't let you, any update? Councillor?
No, you do, I mean, they have this much vaunted interactive thing, but basically it's not updated until when either close a case file or serve an enforcement notice. So all the bit in between, we have no idea whether.
Wow.
I mean, we've got
Progress.
case file number, that started the thing running, we don't get to find until it's closed.
That's ridiculous.
But it's definitely, I mean, there's no progress, or anything like that.
Right, Brethren septic tank we've already dealt with, graffiti on the MCO building has been referred to Bucks anti-social behaviour team for action.
Still there.
Still there. Horton Road roundabout, Paragon and Larder Cathy advertising, town clerk to inspect. Steve, do you have any update on that?
No,
No, it's not been out.
Not been done yet, okay,
Chairman,
right.
Chairman,
Um,
on the signage thing, I did wonder why maybe one of the green spaces team couldn't have looked, but the town clerk offered to do it herself.
Yeah.
But I think because this has gone on for another meeting, could we just ask one of the green spaces team, Lee or somebody, just to go and have a look at them, please, so that we're moving on with it.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah, commented.
I have to declare I've been in there once and twice and eaten.
Okay. Is everyone happy to leave this suggestion?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Oh,
It's the signs on the roundabout, Robin.
Yeah. Skate park upgrade. John.
Yeah. Okay, sorry for coming in too early. I just think we should ask the Shire Council, Council Member, or whoever, just for a clear statement that can be published to let people know why it had to be this particular time. We're all glad it's starting, and we're watching more and more lumps of concrete emerge from who knows where. And they are going to reuse some of that concrete, by the way, in the new. I'll ask them about that. We are sad that people sought to vandalise their JCB digger, and that's why they're putting bits of wood around it. If you notice, when you go past in the evenings, after they finish work, they had to put wood around because somebody broke the windows on their digger. Sadly, but I just think a statement from the council is exactly why it had to be now. You know, we all know that a lot of youngsters use that continuously, and they've got nowhere to go right now. I'd also like as well, in that same letter, there to be clarity on what's going to happen to the shelters that are there, which are also well used by teenagers and young people. I mean, are they going to reinstate this? Because they've dug up one of them is still there in place. are they going to be putting those back in some shape or form in the new skate park or not? Some detail about that would be useful.
Thank you. Robin?
We need to write to cabinet member Clive Harris. Yeah, because he is the cabinet member who managed to get a photograph of himself on his own in the middle, and he looked very fetching in the middle of the skate park. He could have been joined by many people, but he failed to do that. We all would have looked equally fetching or not. But I think we need to write to him, and I think from what I understand, and this isn't, I'm not answering his question, I wouldn't do him to do so, is that there was a large discussion with the Environment Agency and a large discussion around placement of contractors and availability. And I believe that might be part of the answer, but I think it's well worth having a proper answer, which is not what I'm suggesting, but I imagine that'll be part of what the answer will be. And I think that to have an answer to Buckingham Town Council is the right way approach, because then we can explain to parents and children alike who have coincidentally waited close on a decade for this.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Have we seen plans of the new skate park? Because that would answer John's question on the sheltered aspect.
He has this stunningly imaginative drawing.
Yeah, and the people.
It looks nothing like the actuality. I mean, it looks like half a ball park with trees in the distance, and there just isn't that space. So I don't think we have plans.
Yeah, that's obviously the honest impression.
I don't think we had, but I just want to.
So, John, if everyone's happy to support John's idea.
Yeah.
Would it be, if John's happy to accept that we ask for a copy of the size plans of the construction?
Yeah, that'd be something.
So that you may look at that and may answer some of your very pointy questions around because the town council actually built and paid for one of those youth shelters on the request of young people and repaired it. So I think it would be nice if they were to.
Because the police have never wanted them there, but we've always said that's not the police's decision, that the young people like them there. Because when it rains, even though it didn't have sides, they have somewhere to go and shelter.
Put them there in the first place and then change their position 180 degrees.
Yeah. So if everyone's in agreement, thank you very much. Great, thank you, John. Just to finish off, other this sewage overflow to watercourses. We did ask Sherwell, who's Thames Valley, the Thames Water, not Anglia, of course, and also Milton Keynes, our neighbouring authorities. Got replies from them. Sherwell, as you see on the action list, said it's the utility. And lack of capacity be considered similar to a lack of water or electricity. Milton Keynes says, as an authority, we never have thought Section 106 contributions in relation to wastewater treatment. So, Fran?
Slightly different because it's on the position of fresh water. I caught a little bit on Anglian News this evening before I came out, whereby the Suffolk Water Authority are now starting to not connect businesses to the mains water because they haven't got enough water to do so. So it's sort of like this. I didn't manage to catch the whole thing, but it's certainly something worth looking at and how they're actually dealing with it. It was to do with businesses and it was to do with the planning permission for businesses to expand or new businesses to.
They've said the same for this magnificent scheme for that things in Cambridge.
Right.
Yeah. Cambridge says we don't have the water.
But I think that's the MP, isn't it? That's just saying that this is actually the water authority. That is.
So what this was, we asked the town clerk just to check what neighbouring authorities did, so that would be the responses. So,
I know that's slightly different.
Yeah, the news, this is on the BBC website. from the 21st of August. It says a water shortage in the area of Suffolk has led to some firms being refused permissions to set up until they could not expand. BBC has learned the policy by Essex and Suffolk Water has affected those using larger volumes of water by manufacturers, farmers and food processors. A leading council said they could be throttled back from expanding. ESW said there was enough water for current needs in new housing, but not for business growth. The company's policy, which has been in place for about 12 months, has affected an area around the Eye in Suffolk, known as the Hartsmere Water Resource. So that's the basis of it. If you, I'll send the link through to Catherine, and you can certainly get it.
Right, sorry, Robin.
We on action.
Yeah, it's full action. I'll just get to the last item.
I'm just going to update you on things that I've got on the actions. I've had communications over the archaeological site, which is 5322. It's on because I can then read. They're saying that the scope of the archaeological post-excavation works for the site has been agreed between the parties and the archaeology parties. I won't name them in a meeting. They're now working towards the other third party, which is the owners of the site, so they can move forward with the archaeology company, and they're doing that to try and get to the agreement around getting the actual stuff done. So that might not sound like much, but that means that what they've actually got is all parties talking together about how to move this forward. Do you remember when we last spoke about this? The answer was we hope to get them to do this. This suggests that thanks to the officers in Buckinghamshire Council Archaeology Department diligently working on this, who I write to quite regularly, and they are now going to, in recent times, this email's a little bit dated, to provide the information we're all waiting for and more. Okay. So what that's saying to me, without naming any individuals and who what it is, that things are gradually moving forward, but not to a conclusion. That's the slight update. On the
Councillor Sudbury could send that information to the office and we can update.
Yeah, but I don't want to use the names. You can understand quite why I don't think that you like to use the people's names in Buckingham. For degrees, which you understand. What I can say on the other action on the list, which I'm slightly connected to, which is cycle. I'm going to go in and try to the best of my knowledge brief the officers where I think it is and where we're getting to, because you will know, as we've discussed it, that there's the obligations to provide the cycleway along the railway wall are within the section 106 development, and it's down with the third payment. Now I understand, to have corrected, the third payment has been made by the developer, which would suggest that whatever the portions of money are for that, they are now in receipt of those monies. Although Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, it did say that they should have started work before the decisions that the property was occupied. And they haven't done that, but like that ever occurs, yes, quite right, Catherine. But that is sort of moving forward, and there's some other elements around it. I don't feel at liberty to say, but I am chasing it down on a reasonably obvious basis, not always with pleasure on the other side.
Thanks.
Okay. Final one on the list I've got, A421 closure. This has been a bit of a disaster. You'll be aware that Anglia and Water want to close the A421 at Singlebrook Great Forward for the whole of August. Fortunately, they after all a lot of problems, they worked 24/24 to get it finished, and it reopened on last Sunday, August the 13th. We had a correspondence with Derek Carpenter from Bucks Highways, who acknowledged that there was a lot of problems. There was misleading signage, which was suggesting to traffic at the Bletchley Road roundabout that only HGVs need to follow the 822 diversion. Nonetheless, they were still taking it. There were cars. Bletchley Road roundabout, people were still going down there. They obviously then had to turn off the 0421. There was an enormous amount of damage, verges, cars being hit in single Great Forward, Nash, and a lot of damage done in Pilch Lane. At one point, our MP, Greg Smith, got involved, writing to Buckinghamshire Council to say that it was unacceptable. But as we say, Anglian did take that on board. I mean, it even got to the point where truck drivers were pushing water-filled barriers out of the way.
Wow.
Great. The outcome of this, interestingly, Great Forward Parish Council paid for the closure of the Great Forward to Winslow Road. They said we've had enough. It's been dreadful, and they asked Buckinghamshire Council directly to postpone that road, those road closures, which they've agreed to. So it's going to be later in the year. Didn't start to go over it. The reason I'm raising all this is because it's had a huge impact on Buckinghamshire residents, on Buckingham residents trying to get to work, get to hospital appointments, etc., etc., etc. But all credit to Anglian for working 24 to get it finished. So John first, and then Robin.
Well, I think the whole fiasco needs to be properly investigated and learning points taken, because there was clearly a lack of thought and thinking and proper signage. I mean, I drove down a route. I didn't go beyond the bypass roundabout, but I was looking at the signage, and there was none. The only signage that said "Don't go down this road" was after you turned right at the roundabout near the Bridleway, roundabout right at the far end of the bypass. So you could be turning down the A421, and then you could see the sign which said almost "Don't go this way." Obviously, I turned left to go back to the south. But the signage before then was like written very small on these yellow signage. It was utterly ridiculous. Nobody thought about it from the driver's perspective, be they HGV drivers or ordinary car drivers or whatever get in between. It was pathetic, and it needs to have a proper investigation so that lessons can be learned, and this never ever happens again. Because Bucks County Council meetings said, really look inside themselves and think, what on earth did they do? That was so wrong. It wasn't just that people do ridiculous things. I know one person who was pushed out of the way by a car, a policeman who is now being taken forward. This is shocking behaviour, and I would say I blame the system and the way it was set up in the first place. Absolutely ridiculous.
We've got the Substone weekend for our break and the bypass as well. That also was very thoughtless.
Yeah, the Grand Prix weekend when they decided to put a new radio mast in at Ring Road Yards.
Yeah.
Again, Robin.
Yeah, rightly enough, I did get involved. Because it seemed to need somebody to get involved. When I was contacted, no local member was taking this up from that area. So I started following it up and asking questions on immediately, having been contacted by Singleborough residents. The next day, I was dealing with the fact that one of the single residents had been mowed down by a vehicle while trying to stand up the actual signs. And I know the single resident, when he spoke to me, I knew him. I then pursued that a bit further, and I was in some other meeting. And I did then, because the cabinet member was not available, I did then get to talk to the deputy cabinet member about where it was, and asked that a statement of what works have been undertaken and such be undertaken would be sent out to the local Buckinghamshire councillors affected by the road closure order. Now, that was stating all the obvious things like the time of what they'd done and everything that's been said. But one of the things that was shone out of it was the fact that the traffic control measurements were put in there with no water in there, so they could be moved. So they were not traffic control, they were free and floatable. The water company has a right in law to ask for a road closure. and whether we want it or not. And Bucks Council, I'm not defending them, I'm just saying the actuality is that they have very little chance to do that. But somebody would have inspected the scheme that they were putting forward and quantified whether it was going to work. But what they couldn't mitigate for was the consequences of closing the road in Singleborough, where people were rat running, even though they put in their plan to put this stuff in there. So what I will say is that once it was raised, and I don't believe anyone in that conversation did the MP ever correspond with me, not that he would, but all those people I did, so I did follow it up, and with the combined efforts of the deputy cabinet member, who took it very seriously and even phoned me up to talk to me about it, which I was mildly impressed with, and I'm sure he was mildly impressed after talking to me. But he did take it very seriously, and I thank him for that. And we did get to a point where things resolved. Now, what Anglia Water did was probably done as a reaction to the public outcry and where it is. So if these works are going to come back, the important question is, based on what Councillor Harvey said, is to ask them what detailed planning is going to be undertaken now when the works come back to be completed, because otherwise we'll be back to the same situation that the traffic order will be put in a similar way, and we'll have the same problem. So I think we do need to assess what additional works and inspections are going to take place to prevent that happening again, because it was dovetailing back to Buckingham, and on that roundabout there, it was very congested, and it didn't mean that people were rat running through the town and lorries were coming through the town and whatever, which rather defeats the object in the house. So I hope that reassured you. I didn't ignore it. And
thank you. John, we take up your suggestion then. Could we add to that the chaos also calls during Grand Prix weekend?
Yeah, I think there needs to be a proper review.
Yeah.
I'm sure the town council will be happy to be involved with, and lots of local people will be happy to be involved with. But there's
so in the first place, we should write to the Cabinet Minister for Transport.
Yeah,
member.
Yeah.
And CC is deputy in out of courtesy.
I just elevate to Minister.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I'm sure
yeah, I think at the same, we'd be very happy to participate in the review that I'm sure you're going to conduct.
I'll be happy to do that if you can.
Of recent road closures around.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
for personal reasons, it's the deputy who dealt with it, so it'd be well to copy him into it.
Anything else on the action list, or can we move on to planning applications? Thank you very much. Right, number one on your list is University of Buckingham Chandos Road building car park construction operations of a micro energy storage facility and associated works. We've seen this application before. The drawings are full of errors. They've come back with largely new errors, although they haven't changed the palisade fence, have they? Catherine pointed out in her clerk's report that it's in the conservation area. So we would like this to be painted in colour that is more appropriate for the conservation. They haven't actually indicated the colour, I think. This is the problem. It looks like it's a mixture of
The fence that's shown as the palisade fence is obviously timber, but the fence that's shown on the drawing doesn't look like that at all.
no, it looks like metal, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's very blurry on the top. John.
I'm just on Company's House looking at AMP Clean Energy Limited. There's a first Gazette notice which says publication date of the Gazette, 4th of July 2023. The registrar of companies gives notice that unless cause is shown to the contrary, the company will be struck off the register and dissolved not less than 2 months from the date shown above. So I don't know what's happening to the actual applicant as well as the carry.
Well, that unfortunately isn't a planning matter, is it?
No, I know it's not,
Yeah,
but
but
it's-
thank you for the advice.
But I think it's something that I would be very cautious about supporting. Because essentially what this is doing is dumping big lithium ion batteries in the middle of any area really. And presumably they're going to pump the batteries full of juice during 2 o'clock in the morning, and then sell it back to the grid at times of peak usage. So it's quite a good business plan. But do we want these popping up all over the shop in our town? Because that would be the implication. If this gets approved, how many more of these are we going to see? Because frankly, if they can be on a small footprint, make a good chunk of money, are we going to see, people's, I don't know, drives being sold to this? I presume the university has got some sort of commercial arrangement with this company. So I object to it. I'm not quite sure on what planning grounds we can object to it, but I don't think it's an appropriate use of an area which is essentially quite residential. Is what Martin?
Not what I would call residential.
Well,
Station Road is not, you know.
no, it's not residential, but it could be.
Doesn't even have a postcode.
Yeah, I'm cautious and
I mean,
concerned.
I worry about these lithium batteries anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, if
Well, there is that
somebody,
too.
shall we say, mismanages their parking and rams into it. It's
Right, so presumably why they've got to have a steel fence around it.
If it is still.
Martin?
Might be.
Yeah, I don't want to be a NIMBY here, but I don't have a problem with this actually. It has got a steel fence around it with spiky bits at the top, interspaced with wooden slats, which I think is where the confusion is coming from. I quite like
That's what they've said.
Sorry?
Would have been nice if they said.
I quite like the idea of small storage units spaced in a lot of places rather than one big thing, and they can draw in that power from other efficient low carbon gathering places. The batteries, yes. I think we've all got a concern about those. We've seen reports about the e-bikes blowing up and electric cars having issues. And I think that goes for any battery. It needs to be properly managed. And, well, I don't actually believe in batteries. I think they have their own eco problems, but just not once they're put together. They're quite good. But getting to that stage is another whole debate. It says it's low noise. I think these, like a lot of the telecommunication cabinets, will have fans in to keep the electronics inside at a mean temperature, which can get a bit high frequency, annoying, buzzing noise. But it is out the way in that location. Yeah, I think it's a good use of space personally.
Anyone else? Buckingham Society?
We would take the view that Martin's just articulated really, is that we didn't have any objections to it. We felt that it was probably a good thing on the basis that, yes, using energy in that respect is
I do agree with both of you personally. I mean, you could have the same danger if you had 2 Tesla cars in the car park.
Yeah.
They could burst into flames. But not, yeah. So from that point of view, so my recommendation would be that we do not oppose this, but we do ask for the stockade around it to be painted in a colour that's going to be sympathetic to the conservation.
Yeah, happy with that.
That would be my. Actually, secondary.
Yes,
Those in favour? We need to count on this. Right. Those against? 1 against, abstentions, 2 abstentions. Thank you. Fran and Robin.
May I just say, we haven't seen a plan of how they're going to get the power in or out of this. I mean, it doesn't magically arrive at that location, and there's nothing there at the moment.
I was wondering. I was wondering where they're drawing this power from that they're storing
So,
this battery.
Maybe a build and connection plan may be useful to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can add that.
Well, imagine it's going to be a trench across the car park.
Well,
Because it's a line of.
That's only a road at the end of that car park. There's no big.
There is a substation at the other end of the car park in the end of the Chandler's Road,
Yeah.
The white doors.
which is where they're going to connect it to. So I'd imagine a trench in between would probably solve.
Right, thank you for that. If we move on then to number 2, this is Burnley House. Repeat hotel, coming back to revisit us. The first application to turn it from hotel back into a house was refused. They put in another application with a new agent this time. The new agent hasn't anywhere in his statement mentioned Buckingham Town Council or Buckingham Neighbourhood Plan policies. As you'll see from Catherine's notes, the hotel has actually not ever complied with what was condition 7 of the 1997 agreement that the gates should be removed. They're still there and they're shut at the moment. I went past today. So we still have objections by Economic Development at Aylesbury that until it's been advertised as a hotel, that it shouldn't be turned back into a house. And further to that, the new agent has made the point that the owner intends to sell the property. And if it's bought by someone wishing to retain the hotel classification, this application will be withdrawn. So our previous view was that we wanted it, we were happy to have it put back to a house just to say that.
Yeah.
Carolyn.
That was the society's view as well. It's obviously in a residential street. It does seem a perfectly good use to go back to residential. Well,
Yeah.
better than HMOs,
Yeah.
which could be a terrible alternative.
That you can't say that whoever buys it wouldn't turn it. So
Yeah.
It's true.
that's
They have a lot of trouble to stop the sewer problem to
Yes.
subdivide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of our better quality.
Indeed.
Yeah, does anyone else having to say? Martin?
I'll just chip in. I see no reason it can't flip flop between hotel and house and Vicky Verkey at some point in the future. So I'm happy for it to.
Okay. Well, I propose then that we have no objection to this.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Seconded by Anthony. All those in favour? Everybody except Robin. Thank you very much. Number 3, 11 Market Square, the old Barclays Bank display of one non-illuminated fascia, one double-sided externally illuminated projection sign, and digitally printed vinyl to glazing. Heritage have asked for further changes to the original plan, which they have complied with, which referred to the southeast elevation. But generally, it seems to be tidying up the site a bit more, and they've got some very nice artwork showing Buckingham.
Yeah.
Carolyn.
Innovative thought, having the artwork in the windows that people can walk by. We had no objection.
Oh. Excellent. Martin.
Let me declare a slight interest in this. In that there was a sign there once upon a time, because I used to hook my wires over it for the parade, and then they took it down and just left 2 stubs hanging out the wall, which caused me great problems. So I'm in favour of this.
Is everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
I then propose that no objection, seconded by Anthony. All those in favour? Everyone except Robin. Thank you. I think this is number 4, which is 5 at Burley Court, Burley Piers. It's the householder application for a single-storey rear extension. If anyone knows these properties, you know it's very higgledy-piggledy at the back. The only point we really noted this afternoon, when we had our briefing this afternoon, is the loss of garden. But that could be dealt with by removing that garden shed if they needed more garden. It's a ground floor extension, so there's no additional bedrooms, so parking isn't an issue. Anyone comments? No, in that case, I propose no objection. seconded by Anthony. All those in favour? Thank you. That's abstentions. Martin, you? Are you against?
I'm going to abstain.
Two abstentions then, thank you. Next is made Morton Road Phase 2, is it 20 Twickenham Road, householder application for installation of 5 internal air conditioning and 1 external condenser unit. This is retrospective, it's been in there for a while. The one thing that Catherine noted is there has been no noise information provided about how noisy this might be. Anthony, I think it's something you'd like to say on.
Well, I was querying this afternoon and I noticed 1 or 2 people locally are putting in air source heat pumps, which look jolly like these in terms of lumps of kit. And it does beg the question, is it a requirement if you want to install one of these that you have to get planning permission? Because it's not at all clear, certainly in my mind, whether that's the case or not. It would be nice to have clarification on that quite generally.
Yeah, we did raise the question of noise at our meeting too, and I noticed this evening, looking on the portal, that the environmental health officer has requested further detail to be able to ascertain what noise might be. He doesn't have the technical details in the application to ascertain the exact amount of noise and possible disturbance to the community of residents. So I think it's on hold.
In that case, I suggest then that we don't make a decision tonight, but we request, we will wait for further information on the noise. Martin, sure.
Yeah, just on installing one and the noise factor, of course, we would just get that off the manufacturer's site and it will be acceptable because otherwise they wouldn't sell them. So they would make it so. But it begs the question about regular maintenance because when the fan is running, you will get a constant noise, it would be low level, hum, whatever, could be annoying to some people. But it's when it starts or stops where you get that big thump and the fan starts and things rattle or judder. That's, or when it stops, you know, they're the same. That's when you probably will have that. Or the filters are starting to clog up and it, you know, it's trying to draw air through and it can't because it's clogged up. So it's more about not when it's put in because it will be fine because the manufacturer says it will. It'll be a few years after, 5 years, whatever, when it starts to not be maintained very well, that you will have a noisy issue.
But it is retrospective, so the environmental health officer can take noise meter.
I didn't quite catch what Catherine said, but I suspect it was along the lines of on the assumption there's decent maintenance, it's acceptable. And this will be true of any piece of mechanical equipment. That's an horrible noise if it's not maintained properly, and that's down to environmental health or somebody else. It's not. I would suggest it's not a planning issue as such.
Well, even though environmental health will ask for the noise report.
Well, I think they're being cautious. We said a rude version of that, but yes, I think they're trying to be cautious and make sure they're not difficult.
And you'd like me to ask separately about my situation with respect to these.
That would be interesting.
I would just ask Catherine if there's a deadline to respond to this. Due to your comment about not making a decision today, is there a deadline by which we need to respond? Is it before the next meeting?
Well, quite often we don't have sufficient information.
We never have meeting to meeting because we only get 3 weeks. We can't take it to another meeting. We can defer information, but we can't. We can decide that we have no objections subject to the environment and health.
Well, that is the proposal I will make. No objection subject to the environment and health officer being satisfied with the noise level. Your second round?
Yes.
All those in favour? Everybody, include you, John.
Yeah.
Thank you. Acceptable, then, thank you. Item 6 we've dealt with already, Reverend Meeting Hall. Item 7, Odd Fellows Hall, 48 Wells Street. The big problem here is that there's a clash of what we think it's being used as boarding guest house, and the local planning authority and the applicant believe it's for students only, despite the fact it's being advertised on Airbnb and other websites. The monthly rent of around £2,000, which is obviously well within students' pockets. And I continue to push it shouldn't be class C3, it should be class C1, which would require a change of use. Kathleen?
But it is not the application before you.
No.
But the application is about variation.
The variation conditions, as Catherine has outlined here, they want to remove the requirement to. Just got it. They want to remove the stained glass window from the conditions because they say it's in good condition, so they don't need to do anything with it. And the waste and recycling is the other condition they want to change. There's been a major objection from one of the neighbours, which I'm sure you've all seen. She has outlined very carefully over 2 pages all the problems with this, which she terms as a very erudite piece of fiction which bears no resemblance to reality. I mean, unfortunately, this is an ongoing matter that's not going to go away. So is it within our remit to refuse to change of conditions?
Well, yes, it is. And we've been asked to comment. That's what the waste and recycling themselves said about the new plan.
Oh, yeah. Yes, so it's now private waste management, and they have to put their bags out at a certain time in the morning, which they've been picked up. So it's a bag service, so they're not leaving bins out on
Private bag service. Like pickup truck.
All right, okay.
Because basically the door is just about wide enough to get a bin through. Also, a little can't be bothered about the fact that it's a closed room, that they keep the bags in when they've collected them. Because I mean, they've got weekend tenants and people like that. They just leave the bag outside their door for the cleaners coming in, and then they stow them in the room just inside the door, which has got no aeration. They also telling people because there's no common rooms in the basement except for the games room, which is the dark hall on the end. And it's not a common dining room.
But basically all that becomes
they say the windows are fine, but I've been and actually looked at the photograph, and what they've done basically is looked at the cracked wood and put some very thick paint over it, rather haphazardly. I mean, even I could do a better job than that. And I'm not that committed, but I mean, it's splashed all over the glass. They haven't put masking tape or anything. It's a good thing it's not a listed building.
But a lot of this becomes an enforcement matter, isn't it?
Well, as I say, we've been asked to comment on the variation of conditions, and if members decide that they would quite like somebody to look after those windows a bit, and
Carolyn.
Society just almost throw up your hands in horror at this. The answer is emphatically no. They should not be allowed to vary the conditions. The conditions are there for very good reasons, and heavens knows they've got them by the skin of their teeth, the whole planning application through. They really must stick to the letter. I think there's some indication that we might follow this up as Steve boundary. We don't think it'll do any good, but
we will. I mean, the fact that it's just black bags of rubbish means it's not being separated. It's going into landfill.
Yes, quite.
Yeah. So Any other members wish to speak on it? Then I will propose that we do oppose the variation of conditions I've requested for the reasons we discussed. Anthony, seconded. Those in favour? That's everybody bar. Thank you very much. Item 8, Best Western Hotel, it's not on the Ring Road South. Just because we don't have a Ring Road South. It's on the A421, it's nor is it on the Railway Walk, which is also on the address. Temporary change of use from hotel to catered student accommodation together with conferencing and event space in University of Buckingham and reconfigured parking area. The whole reason for this is because the university desperately needs rooms for students who are going to be coming to the medical school in January 2024. They're increasing the medical school places from 120 to 230 places. Wow. Recognising there's a big need for doctors and consultants, etc. The university did get permission in the past for new building student accommodation on the Innovate site and in Station Road, but as you'll be aware, they haven't had the funding to proceed with that.
But now that's, if you don't implement a planning permission within 3 years, it's gone. So they'd have to start afresh if they've got some money.
So as the Albanian asylum seekers move out from the hotel,
And point of order, they're not all Albanian.
they're not okay.
That's not correct.
Okay, I withdraw that. Just asylum seekers. That was what was put out in the media.
Oh, that is incorrect.
Yeah.
I know all the nationalities.
Thank you, Robin.
And they're not all Albanians.
Okay.
But they are asylum seekers.
Yeah, they are asylum seekers. I think they're going to the barge.
I correct myself.
That point of order, that is not been decided either, and there's no information in the public domain to that effect. So where they're going, and if they're leaving, that decision hasn't actually been taken. So it's all sub-decisions, so we shouldn't discuss something that hasn't been decided.
So are you saying we shouldn't be looking at this
I'm not, no, the application's fine, that's a completely separate matter. So the origins of the people who live there, they are not planning reasons and they've got no planning.
This is from the university.
Giving the background.
No, but they're not technically correct and we have to stay on fact, which is the application, which I'm not commenting on.
Okay.
But I will comment on that.
Well, if I can rephrase the current residents, when they leave, will be replaced at least the 71 rooms.
When the government's leases up.
Good.
Yeah.
So the 71 guest bedrooms, 2 meeting rooms, bar, restaurant, kitchen, and separate 12 bed staff accommodation, and all the parking and all going to be poodled up. And the university would like to get in by January 2024, as I say.
The gym and pool were in open to the public.
Yeah. There's plenty of parking spaces. The university itself says that only 40% of their students have access to cars. Yeah, so it's considered ample parking to meet the needs of students. It should also be noted the proposal would help reduce the significant demand of the local renting housing market from students, and also the accommodation would provide local employment staff. Martin.
I think this is a good idea, considering we've already got a different way of using it. I won't say change of use, just a different way of using it at the moment, and it can be seen that it can work that way. I wouldn't like it to change its use to student accommodation. I would like it to be as is, and then reviewed on some basis, because I don't think in the future we may want it to be returned to its original use.
They've said that they're only taking it for 5 years and then it would be built to hotels, and they're not making any structural changes to the rooms.
I agree on that, but going for planning permission, would that be the case? I know that's what they've said, and they're not changing anything.
Student residences are a different class to hotel.
Exactly, and this is going to be a student residence.
But it's going to be temporary.
as long as that's the case then.
Well, if at the end of the 5 years, I would imagine.
I think it's a good idea on a temporary basis, if that's the wording that needs to be.
That's the wording of the application, temporary change of use.
Yeah.
Students.
I want that in bold.
The university do say it should be noted that
We've had some school classrooms that are temporary back about 40 years ago.
Yeah, well now boys at Porton Meadow.
university.
It's 26 now.
At the end of this period, the intention of the hotel would then continue to operate for tourist accommodation. Any continued use of student accommodation would require a new plan.
Yeah, I don't mind it being renewed, but temporary is the name of the game.
That is what the application is headed, temporary.
Yeah, thank you.
use.
As I say.
Right. So, anyone else want to speak on? Sorry, Fran.
I'm curious to know why. Well, there was some local authorities that questioned whether hotels being repurposed for use by the government to house asylum seekers was a change of use and did require planning permission. And obviously our hotel on the Ring Road, it was decided that it didn't, but now to accommodate students, so they do require planning permission. So it just seems to be a bit of a juxtaposition or something like that.
I think what the government wants to do done.
Yeah, it just seems a bit odd to me. That's all.
County, they didn't bother to propose it at all. I think they just.
No,
We're
but
having it, and we're moving them in.
I personally have no issues apart from the fact that we have got so many people waiting to be processed through no fault of their own.
Nothing we can do about the
Which is aside from this. So I'm like, please don't anybody think that I'm complaining that they were here. I just find it slightly bizarre that for the university to be able to rent it as a whole, which is what they're trying to do, requires planning permission. Whereas because
the asylum seekers are not students. These aren't going to be students.
Not allowed to do anything, were they?
You have to remember that students don't pay rates.
Do asylum seekers pay rates?
I have no idea. Went on paying their business.
Yeah.
Now, if there are students in it, they won't have to pay those rates.
It comes in education.
Right, okay, so that is quite a, well, council tax. Rates, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm.
Yeah.
But yes, that's probably a good reason.
Solely up to fine.
It's good to give it.
However, if the conference facility and gym and swimming pool are still being able to the public, that's presumably still
seminars and conferences in locations.
So
but the rest of the
it's additional to their teaching facilities.
Yeah, but the gym and the swimming pool still being open to the public, that's still being run as a commercial. So therefore that would be subject to business rates.
Who are that keen on catering for themselves. And I would imagine that there'll be as many cooks and cleaners as the hotel has. Just to run it. Because students aren't going to clean their rooms. Because they've got people to do it for them.
Yeah, exactly. So after that discussion, I suppose that we have no objection. All those in favour? That's everyone. Probably the same. Thank you very much. Right, brings us to the chalet in Stowe Avenue. This is rather neglected. That Our perhaps the
I've been
the
walking past that for
applications.
so long and thought, I really want to get hold of that poor little house. Give it some TLC.
The applications to convert the upstairs, putting another bedroom in, so it will go from 2 to 3 bedrooms, one on the ground floor, which will be the master, and 2 bedrooms upstairs. It includes a rear porch entrance, and there'll be
There's
a,
a proper bathroom.
yeah,
Yeah.
You've got a bathroom that's sort of tucked into what looks like an oversized cupboard. And a
Yeah.
separate toilet that doesn't even have a hand base. So
Gosh.
it was definitely an afterthought.
Yeah.
This bathroom notion is, you know, good heavens.
and it'll have a staircase rather
Yeah.
than to get to the first floor. Buckingham Society.
I think we echo some of the comments we made. How nice to see that this building is going to become a positive residential advantage on that street. On their avenue.
I think it's a nice bit.
Yeah, I actually really would love it.
And I think someone is actually giving it some loving attention, which it needs.
I can see Hansel and Gretel waiting.
So yes, the bar support.
I have had the privilege of being invited into the house.
Oh, right.
And I will leave it at that.
It's not fair.
But as the Buckingham Society said, I think that revamping that on Stone Avenue will be an absolute bonus for the area. So
Yeah.
I have absolutely no objections to clearing the land around it and the scrubland and a few maybe small trees to create a nice homely place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you. So I propose then we have no objections.
absolutely.
Seconded by Anthony, those in favour? That's everyone except Kevin abstaining. Item 10 is number 5, Paisley Walk in Linden Village. It's a household application for a single story rear extension. Seems fairly straightforward. Have any comments on this? In that
No.
case, I propose no objections. Seconded by Anthony, all those in favour? Abstentions? That's 2 abstentions, Martin and Robin, thank you. Number 11 is just revisiting White House cottages on the Bletchley Road. They were unable to get the windows that the supplier originally quoted for, so that they couldn't get thin enough double glazed windows in listed buildings. They're literally changing the traditional wood frame slimline double glazed units, but
What they basically need is, because the drawing numbers are listed on their decision, or approval decision, they need to change the drawing numbers to the new suppliers.
Yeah.
It's really not worth the
Yeah.
time.
It does seem a lot of bureaucratic waste of time.
so no, I propose no objection. And
It has a
It had a back.
just seconded, by everyone in favour? Everyone bar Robin, thank you. Now we come to 31 Highlands Road. This is the only application we have tonight that hasn't yet had a notice put up. Householder application for replacement front boundary wall, which is retrospective. The street scene, I would suggest the biggest problem we have here. I don't know if you'd like to pass that around, you saw it, no, they didn't. But
Thank you.
most of Highlands Road has low walls, the sort of dwarf walls, right up to the top. The walls that these people have put in, having ripped out all the hedges and trees, are 1.8 metres high. They're brick with a trellis, the wooden trellis top. They've also put a no parking sign up in front of the
Well, the
property.
narration,
Right,
it is literally because
yeah,
parents park while they're waiting.
so that's not an issue one.
The council wrote on it, and it's all about.
Yeah.
the parking, but they-
One thing of concern with the planning application, the agents signed a declaration that will any trees or hedges need to be removed or pruned in order to carry out the proposal, and he signed it no.
Yes.
He might argue that by the time he came to sign this, they'd already been ripped out.
Yes, but he signed it for the previous application, which was refused as well, so. At that time, there was a laurel hedge that was possibly 3 feet thick and taller than me. Round the 3 sides apart from the, I mean, I went there, and it was a big hedge, yet it needed maintenance, but. One of the reasons that members weren't bothered about the previous application was the fact that you couldn't see it because of the hedge. And now you can. So I expect another application for the next upward extension.
Buckingham Society?
We half wondered if this was sort of some sort of vengeance on all the refusal of planning.
Funny if you say that.
It's obviously changed the street scene quite dramatic, and we always regret the loss of greens, pitching and trees, particularly on Highlands Road, which happens to be quite a green road. I don't know if there are planning reasons.
Well, it's not in keeping with the street scene.
Yeah, well, yes, yeah. For that reason alone,
Yeah.
we wouldn't.
Any other comments on this? Martin?
I don't. No, let's not comment on what it is and what it isn't. But if we object, what would we be asking them to put it back to?
Well,
because you can't put another hedge there because that will take ages to grow. You could put a better hedge than a laurel one, which was quite high, and maybe not particularly fit for purpose. The good old privet hedge would be better in that place, but yeah, so.
well, it's a lower wall.
A wall comparative to the other walls in the street.
Yeah.
They could take the wall height down.
We don't have to suggest what greenery they plant, it's just.
I mean, they've lost 4 substantial, I mean, trees with trunks about that across.
Half the hedge was laurel.
But I mean, it doesn't have to be a hedge, to the wall down. They could even put their little bits of trellis in the. Between pillars.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're probably going to put trellises or something on it anyway.
And you're going to measure this wall at the entrance, are you? Because it's on a slope, obviously the wall height will vary.
It is 1.8 metres.
Where though?
Yes.
Because it must be more than that down by the side entrance. Or less than that, depending on where you've measured the 1.8 metres.
That's the only
And
bit.
also does the side, which slope even more than.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So we need to
From side to side, so.
put a datum point in where you're going to measure the 1.8 metres. And even on the front, it varies down.
Plans, you know.
So
I think we would take several bungalows at random down that side of Highlands Road and lay that height
yes,
to the wall, which is probably.
I have no objections to the railings at the top and that sort of style, but yeah, it would be better if it was lower.
In that case, I'm going to propose this retrospective application because it is out of keeping with the street scene, the rest of Island Avenue.
Yeah.
Seconded by Anthony, who was in favour? Abstentions? 2 abstentions. And
Do you want to make any remark about taking it down to the height?
Yeah.
It's the rest of the group.
no, agree with that.
Yeah.
Should be commensurate with the bungalow street. Thank you.
Looks nice, I think.
At least it will stop him. So it's between the extension.
Right, unlucky number 13. That's the last one we need to consider tonight. The land adjacent to 73 Morton Road, just above Bray Lodge. Approval of reserve matters pursuant to outline permission for appearance landscaping layout and scalable residential development of 12 dwellings. This one's had quite a long checkered history. The outline permission was given in 2017 with 22 conditions attached. A detailed reserve matters submission was made in March of 2019, which we opposed. They came back a year later, 9 months later, with another amended submission in December 2020, which we opposed, and that's what Catherine had attached to her notes. And then at that point, we now have another amended submission before us, but it should be noted that in January 2021, after the planning committee, Councillor Sparshbury requested a quorum.
I won't speak on the application, but I do believe that was before the new constitution, so we might not need to remember.
Right.
So I think you need to bear.
You only need, in those days, then you need to.
I believe, but I think that's only check that we need to check. I'm not a
You
legal
only needed
officer.
one member to call it in instead of the three at the moment. To override.
Kind of they missed that, wouldn't it? Although I won't say anything.
So there's no acknowledgement of the Buckingham Vision and Design Statement or of the Buckinghamshire Council AV Design Guide. Arboretum people want a new tree survey because the previous one was done 8 years ago.
Trees grow there.
Although the ecologists call it acceptable, there are 9 objections. In addition to Robin's calling, most of them referring to the pavement, lack of road, and lack of space. Our main thing, of course, is about how cramped the development is, and not enough space for people to enjoy the outside. So, what members think of this? Carolyn, should we start with Buckingham Society and then John?
Yeah, I think it's a feeling of great disappointment all around for us, because it's quite an interesting site, and we feel that it is a very unimaginative attempt at cramming it with houses, which are rather bland in the extreme, as pointed out, Chairman, have no mention of the various design guides that are extant. I think the main gripe really is the access straight onto Morton Road. We've all discussed this at length. No footpath is possible. You feel that the would-be residents of this site will be just confined. They won't be able to get out safely. And it's just such a badly imaginative solution to what could have been rather a good site linking into the Roxwell path. And I'm sure there are reasons why it doesn't do that, but they could have tried a lot harder. So we have not made a decision as to whether it's been rejected or not, but we are going to write and say that the design is poor. We still have an issue with the footpaths, and we don't think it should go ahead as is.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is that they haven't addressed any of our objections to it since 2019, really. They also haven't addressed affordable housing, which we pointed out.
Yeah. Well, I thought that 4 of those houses were so-called.
Double checking what we've heard.
There's certainly, there are 4 that are a lot smaller, should be 6 of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think they were arguing about 25%, but precedent was set by the inspector. It
So it
says
should be 35%.
35, and consequently it should be 6.
Okay.
Yeah, because it would come under the ballot. 25%, as you say, not about 35%. It's not big enough to trigger that. Yeah. Did they address the affordable housing?
No, and there's nothing from the affordable housing officer.
That's what I thought. Well, they could have washed their hands of it when they decided it didn't come under the Buckingham Neighbourhood Plan. But then, of course, the ballot things come later, doesn't it?
That's this current amended plan. those are the original, that's the previous amended, and that's the original. It's a bit more of a paperwork.
Yes, the
bricks, it's right.
Regarding affordable housing, BALP policy H1 says that more than 11 houses on a site larger than 0.3 of a hectare should attract an affordable housing ratio of 25%. David? Yeah. Martin?
Here's some thoughts. They did have a 6 metre wide road, but now they've reduced it to 5 metres. That includes a 1.8 metre path and a 1 metre service channel the other way, the other side. I'm assuming the traffic officers and department are okay with that steep incline into the site onto Moreton Road, but it's maybe only 4-wheel drive vehicles can use this site because it's a heck of a thing. But I would also wonder whether at the site entrance there ought to be some grilled drainage or a cattle grid, because we had a similar situation at the Latin school when they built those houses there. The rain now comes down those the road by the Latin school and straight over Shandos Road across the other side and dumps it all into the other people's land. So I think there ought to be some sort of management, especially there's a bend there and it's downhill and we've got grass or tree area there which may or may not absorb it, but not necessarily in dry and then flash floods that we seem to be getting. So I think we ought to have some sort of drainage across the entrance, or maybe part of the way up as well, so that it's not all trying to be caught at the bottom. And then the next one is my favourite of waste disposal. You know, have they done turning circles and stuff here? And can they get it up there and do the trees overgrow so much that you can't get a waste bin around those bends and stuff? Anyway, there we go. That was my 2 pennies. Thank you.
I think I did see a traffic diagram somewhere that proves it, but they might have to use the special little lorry. You know, I know they have when we did Open Crescent.
Yeah, but you can't keep on requesting that all the time, because that's an added expense on the county's resources.
They have this special small.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
In villages, you see that have narrow bits.
Yeah.
So if they're going to have to send it out, especially for that one estate in Buckingham, then.
But there comes a point where you've used up that capacity of that lorry, and the next one is the straw that did something else to the donkey.
But the stupid thing is that they could do it as a horizontal run out onto Western Avenue through the old garage court. They could get a few more houses then, because the garage court would accommodate at least 2.
But I am worried about the water runoff.
Right.
Yes, well, I've just checked that you're right, there is no road across the access.
John, and then Lisa.
Thanks.
I agree with what's been said so far from Martin and everybody else, and I'm not sure the issue about a pavement on that side of the road is actually important, because you can't take it all the way up to West Avenue going north, and you can't go much further south to see either because it's very large. So I think maybe having something there for people who are walking out to stand in before they cross what is quite a busy road. But I think trying to insist on the pavement, the full length is redundant in my opinion.
You could have a proper pavement within the verge north to Western Avenue, where I would imagine that. And you know the house in the road. No, not going uphill, though, isn't it? They're a big verge in front of their front edges.
Do they not own that?
There's a design line scuff mark up it.
There's a house called Castle View that's set back from the road there, opposite Allington Road. And that has a step going up to it. I assume that the land.
It has got enough room to put a proper pavement. And
But
that
who's
would
now?
fit, well, I would imagine it's County Burke.
Okay.
And
Well,
that takes you up to where Morton Road levels out and you've got a decent view both ways.
yeah, no, if it's possible, if it's possible to have a pavement all the way up, then yes, I agree with that. But, yeah, all of what Martin said about the waste refuge was.
Thank you, John. Lisa?
What Martin was saying about the recycling lorry, picking up something that Catherine said earlier about horticultural thing hasn't been done since 2019. Well, that ought to be really looked into then, because if the site is now more overgrown, then it might impact the recycling
They
truck.
cleared the scrub a long time ago. The protected trees are the two groups each side of what will be the new access, but not all the way down to Bray Lodge. So it's two sort of clumps like that, and then you've got bare land down to Bray Lodge, and then they're going to drive the access between the two groups of protected trees, which are only the hedgerow trees.
Okay.
The further back, there are no protected trees.
Right.
But as arbitorial said, they want a new tree survey.
Yeah,
I mean, 8 years is a long time.
yes.
But once it's built, we'll get applications to cut the trees back
Yeah.
from numbers 2, 3 and 4 anyway,
Yeah.
so, you know, watch this space.
Definitely.
So I'm going to propose then that we continue to oppose this application for reserved matters on the grounds of what we've been discussing tonight, and also our previous objections which haven't been addressed. One of them they'd moved the plot number 8 garage away from the trees. So there are a few things that Catherine's obviously aware of that they have done, but largely not. And of course, affordable housing, as far as we can see, they have addressed. Secondly,
Yeah, well, I was putting my hand up to speak. Hopefully. I think I may have misspoke earlier. I'd started reading the Foundry Lane item, and there was arguments over the number of affordable houses for that site. So I apologise and retract that statement.
are you happy to second what I've just proposed?
Yes,
Thank you. All those in favour? Everybody bar Robin, thank you very much.
Oh, Councillor, I'm really pleased that there are split boxes. The trees. As part of the ecological thing.
Number 14 was about lime tree reduction at St Bernardin's Church.
That's so.
Yeah, which has already been sorted out by email with round. Planning decisions, just to say a couple of them. Former Little Chef, which we had no objections to, although we had some provisos about traffic management, etc. That was approved, and they accepted the traffic management plan that we accepted, suggested with a little restriction on it. On its hours, it has to be, can only be open 6 p.m. to 11, sorry, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. And electric vehicle charging points, they can't put those in for 12 months because there isn't a power supply. You can start it, we do that at the moment.
Only the Shell garages.
Sorry, Chairman, where is this?
It's the old Little Chef next to the Travelodge.
Oh, okay.
Planning decisions on item 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm perplexed there a little bit because when we asked for, did we not ask for, although it's been self-regulated, McDonald's to be open only a small amount of hours?
It's open the same. It closes at 11.
Yeah, but only by their own doing. I think the planning application, we asked for certain timings and they said, no, you can go all night if you like, didn't
No,
I believe?
no, I don't think so.
No? Okay.
This one is quite specific. 6
Yeah.
morning to 11.
I was just trying to get unity,
Yeah.
not that I agree with.
What are Costa's hours? The drive Costa. Because it would seem churlish if Starbucks hours were being restricted, whereas Costa's hours aren't.
I think up there on the Bible, so I don't think anybody bothers about it. It's not that Costa in town.
Well, McDonald's
No.
is very good at closing, so it ought to be.
What
Yeah,
Costas is.
yeah, but I'm like, they will be in direct competition with each other, won't they? Starbucks drives there and Costa drives there.
Yeah.
But no, I'm just sort of just thinking like everyone's not allowed to open
Right, so
beyond
it's
those hours and the other one is.
it's got here that they close at 7 PM, Costa drive-through.
Right,
That's by choice, obviously.
6 AM till 7 PM.
okay.
West Street, 4 West Street, it's now a Greek restaurant. We proposed the illuminated fascia sign projecting board, menu board. There was an unconsulted late amendment. It's now a non-illuminated projecting sign, use of existing wrought iron bracket. And
I think somebody needs to go and have a look tomorrow because when I drove down here this evening, there was people with ladders looking like they were putting lights up.
it's not internally illuminated.
Oh,
Well,
Well, the Greek one.
I mean,
Yes.
strings of fairy lights or.
It was quite a substantial sort of strip lights
Trough back.
on the outside.
Flies on the fish.
Is that
Yes.
well, yeah, I'm like, I was driving past people at ladders, didn't really see what was going on. I think it does need to be checked.
You're going back then.
Then, so, Lisa,
just going back to the little chef site, I thought, as I was saying it, I thought it was wrong, and I am wrong. McDonald's closes at 10 PM, not 11. So if this place is going to be open till 11, then they're going to have an extra hour on what McDonald's is allowed. So, not very fair, is it?
No.
depends who
It
wants to
depends what
do
they
it.
apply for, you know, they want to do it to another, and they'll be very happy for that.
I think McDonald's went to close at midnight. And
Yeah,
they
Yeah, they did, yeah, they did.
And they were told no, and they had to close at 10.
And they had to change the sign.
Yeah,
Remember,
Yeah.
this is also going to serve a hotel.
I think there was a commercial to see.
Travel.
No, it doesn't do catering.
Could be that as well.
Doesn't even comes to breakfast.
But as long as you've got unity across, you
it's
know.
not nighttime.
Favourite
you
one,
know,
yeah.
so-
Yeah,
Breakfast.
shouldn't be advised, you're right.
Sorry, Chairman.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
I think that's a commercial matter, and I
Yeah.
don't think it's a planning.
Not a planning
matter.
Yeah.
But I'm just reporting that it has got approval with that.
Yeah.
Finally, 43 Treefield Road Conservatory, we opposed because we thought the gap was too narrow between it and each side fence, but it's been approved. The officer said the proposal is to be erected entirely within the curtilage of the site. And does not warrant refusal on grounds of inadequate setting from the site boundary. Refused, 31 Highlands again.
So the means then you've got to leave it.
Yeah, we actually had no objection to raising the roof and inserting a new first floor. I think we'd given in by that time,
That
but
was because we couldn't see it because of the hedge.
interestingly, the decision we took tonight, it was out of keeping with the existing property and harmful to the character of the streets.
Yes.
The loss of trees was noted by the local planning authority. Another one that was refused that we opposed, 18 Pender Road on Rumbold's Fields. This must be a first refusal up there. Garage conversion, home office gym.
Oh, yeah, no, was the gentleman further who wanted a gigantic tournament on this room.
Oh, right, he got the
It was
street.
refused.
This was a certificate of lawfulness, it's refused, contrary to condition 14 of the planning approval, which restricted use of garages to garages only.
It's a 5-bedroom.
Yeah.
I remember what was it?
And interestingly, they noted our comment, but they put us down as Buckinghamshire Parish Council. So we're now up there with Buckinghamshire Council. That we're ahead of them because we've got one more word in the name.
When we put it in there.
Steve. Planning appeals. There was an appeal heard on 28 Border Lane, which is at the Bletchley Road roundabout end of Lacehill, very close to Caroline's.
Yes, I remember that one. Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, the application, the appeal was made combining what we can thought was a land grab with the timber fence being 2.5 metres high. Because the inspector decided there wasn't any land grab because the plans weren't clear enough to show exactly where the edge was. He allowed the appeal, which meant the timber fence was also improved. If they'd been listed as separate breaches, he could have made separate decisions, so that was an error by the local planning authority. And then another appeal, which is yet to be heard, land at Foundry Drive, which Anthony just touched on a minute ago. This is 16 dwellings that were refused on an industrial site, an employment site, hadn't been advertised for 2 years, was cramped development contrary to, get this, Buckingham Vision and Design Statement, Buckingham Neighbourhood Plan, back to and the NPPF. And that is going to be heard later in the year, but anything we wish to add to response, see the addendum in the clerk's report, we need to let them know by Monday, 18th September. We discussed it at the briefing today, and we felt that what we'd already objected to would cover everything. Is everyone happy with that?
Yeah.
Good. Buckinghamshire Council Matters, Robin, I know you've been dancing. Sorry,
Yeah.
Number 10. Consultation, permitted development rights. This is a fairly complex consultation. And what I'd ask members to do tonight is to agree that we set up just a small working group to go through this so we can respond to it. If we started doing it now, I think it would be 2 hours down the road. Members be happy for that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think referring to this consultation.
Yeah.
Yeah, DLWH and C consultation.
Yeah, there are 88 questions.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
that's why you won't do it tonight, John.
I think
Could we have a couple of volunteers?
And John, thank you. I'll put, we just.
Yeah, anyone who speaks on it, it was automatically volunteer, thank you. You and John. So could we have a couple of volunteers just to perhaps sit down?
I'll look at it tonight.
When are you thinking of? When are you thinking of?
Catherine,
It's up to me. Let's pick September,
for the month.
but we've got another one to do as well, which is going to the September meeting. You can see that.
So Martin, you volunteer?
Maybe.
Careful.
You don't need to do it in here, do you?
Can I suggest that we email the chairman and see who comes forward rather than break down people?
Yeah, I can fit it in September.
That's what
Thank
we're
you.
up, isn't it?
John, were you,
Leveling it up there.
were you happy to help, John?
Let me look at my September diary.
Mine's full, but you know, it'll be good today.
When I've got the volunteers, I will circulate your water dates.
I'm likely to work on some other things, but I'm see tonight.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, John and Martin. Thank you very much.
Let's do it each, then we'll come to that.
Right, now we can move to item 11, Buckinghamshire Council Matters, to receive news of council new documents and other information on new documents.
No, I don't think I've seen anything, do you, Kevin?
No,
No, just for
I've
information.
got the written question answered.
Yeah, just for information for new documents, those members who are interested in it. The boundary changes are on the agenda for next week, so I think that some people might be interested. But it's the what was suggested with the doing away with the too small, which was set up to keep Luffield Abbey alive. And that's going there. But I have noticed, I emailed the clerk that I did think we just, and my memory of the meeting might be as I thought it ought to be, not as it was. There was no mention in that consultation about numbers of councillors, even though the actual other paragraph mentioned changing numbers of councillors. It might be worth just checking what we sent them, because they don't meet very often, and this is where they're going to make that decision, and we won't be able to put it in the next meeting. That decision will be taken, so I think we need to check.
At a previous meeting, it was requested that I look into consult now on the numbers of councillors dependent on the number of electors in local parish. And off the top of my head, I don't have the actual numbers, So like I said, a clerk did send out recently to say to everybody to say we hadn't looked for an increase because we are well within the current expected number of councillors for the electorate we have. However, we would look at it for 4 years' time because the expected number of electors will be up to a higher limit the next 25.
But with respect for you, Chair, we were already 2 councillors down on what we would have been last time we were assessed by the district council. So what we're saying is we're leaving it 8 years to assess it, which really is not appropriate, and that being told that we're going to leave it now when that wasn't what we discussed in the meeting isn't what we agreed as councillors. So I think we need to bring that back to bring that decision back to council.
Yeah, we're not talking about that.
Yeah,
It's just.
Sorry.
So,
My recollection of that meeting, if we're talking about the same thing, correct me if I'm talking about something else, was that we would go for the boundary changes and go back to being 2 wards for now, and then look at because it was a time sensitive thing, wasn't it? To get in quick enough to be able to get the boundary reviews done. And then at a later date, we could then look at the number of councillors.
but
That was my recollection of the meeting.
I think that's why I said it as I might have wanted to remember it. That's why I used those words. But I do think that it's for us to decide whether we go with what's been suggested. It's not for this meeting that we have it on the, for a council to decide, because what Steve's told us what's been discussed, but I think it should be for everyone here to disagree or agree. But that wasn't what I was going to say, but I was just saying because it was information on that and it wasn't meant to wind out to a discussion. I apologise.
If I could not just answer the advice that we received, whether it would have been rejected by the Standards Committee if we did anything outside of what now could generally advised. And I just found the figures now. We have something like 10,500 electors currently, which now recommend should be 17 councillors. So I think it's what we've got. The next threshold is 11,900 electors, which makes it the recommendation of 18 councillors. And the forecast is that we won't reach 12,000 electorate until 2027.
thank you. It's also worth.
Population is different to electorate.
Anyway, thanks, Steve. It's not the right thing. No, what I was going to say, I shouldn't have started that conversation. I apologise. I apologise. I'll give you some good news first. Now going to the other things. You will recall that you, Planning Committee, had requested on numerous occasions that the development on the Aylesbury Road next to Whitepat should go to committee. What I can assure you now is that I have secured 3 members to get that application. What I'm telling you now is they're not members of Buckingham members, they're members from across Buckinghamshire. As I've been having discussions about it, and I'm very worried that we've missed the time for a calling because our local Buckinghamshire councillors, despite best efforts of the chairman and the officers, wouldn't support a calling. And I felt that it was substantial enough application, 300 houses on the Aylesbury Road, that it should be discussed at the committee. So I've got, and I can't mention this because they're councillors, Councillor Stuart Wilson and Councillor Steve Guy agreed on the morning of my son's wedding, when I wasn't supposed to be doing anything, but please don't record it on the morning of the son's wedding, as I might be in trouble, agreed to support it and wrote in. So if you go to the website, it should now include 3 councillors, which I believe under the Constitution actually substantiates that it goes to committee, because I can't have that application decided on delegated powers and not going to committee or whatever. So basically that means that secures the town council's opportunity to speak, and that secures the residents who want to make time to speak. So I think that once that's live, I think, and I would ask that we write to those two councils. They don't live in North Buckinghamshire, they live in South Buckinghamshire, and their reasons for supporting it was their understanding and support for parish and town councils and concerns being heard, and that was why they did it. And their comments are on the website, because if it happens in one place, it will happen in another, and we should support each other. That's the positive. Some of the other things that aren't quite so positive. You will be aware that the application was on the Tindrick Road for putting a shed, which you all were concerned, you knew it was coming, and you made comments about it being in the floodplain. Now, I did ask for that to go to committee, and as you can imagine, I wrote quite a lot, and I carried on with quite a lot of conversations around it. And I had then asked whether I could read this out to you, because I wanted to know. And having discussed the application with the manager, and subsequently with the chairman and the vice chairman, which I can say was their councillors, Councillor Patrick Feely and Councillor Howard Mordew, though they supported my concerns, they didn't believe that they were substantive enough to facilitate a meeting based upon what the officers said and the Environment Agency, and the points that I made, which I have to thank the office for, is that it was even not actually, correct me very quickly if I'm wrong, it was Thames Water that they consulted, not Angular Water, but they obviously felt that Thames Water, those members felt that Thames Water had an influence in Buckingham and the Hughes. As a person whose family grew up at the head of the Hughes, I would maintain that my family's village is at the head of the Hughes. So anyway, I then corresponded with the head of the services, because I wasn't happy with that, and sort of said, well, I ended up that we are in disagreement. But he came back to me stating that they didn't believe that it would be the president, and the areas around what's flood zone 3 and the discussion around flood zone 2. Now, what this actually means is, and they put in some conditions which will be on to public. They're not going to resist this application, and which means that through the delegated power system of the council, what I thought were really reasonable concerns about the 2022 flood and the 2007 flood, which are public record, weren't strong enough concerns for the two members to support it strongly enough to make sure that the officers wouldn't do a delegated power. So this application will be determined by the officers and likely to be agreed. So that's very sad news, but I did put quite a lot of time into trying to mitigate that, and I apologise that I was unsuccessful. I'm in the midst of another discussion, which I'm none too sure where it's going, based upon my bitter experience, is you will be aware that the Mays Morton application next to the school in those fields, which I considered to be a substantive change, and I considered that it also was adjacent to the boundary of Buckingham Town Council and should be considered because it's a substantial change. And I'm in the middle of a discussion of whether that's going to go to committee. So if you can look at that, I've asked it to go to committee, whether we can seek any members, Buckingham Council members, to Buckinghamshire Council members to support the principle that goes to committee, because my views are it is such a substantial change, such a major deviation that it's really worth being determined by officers and not by delegated powers, because it will define both parishes, and I think that's something that should be discussed. Where are we in that? Who knows? We're still in it. What I have been involved in then is I've taken a additional, try and find the notes to that. Apologise by opening different screens. You will be aware that, you might not be aware that the structural and highways issues are coming up to do with the Osley Way application, which this council objected to on the grounds of the neighbourhood plan and it not being in keeping with it. And I do believe the chairman in the meeting spoke about sections of it, and I think I might have even gone and talked as well. I'm sure that was what happened. Now, I've questioned my concerns around it. What I've raised is the highway works delivery programme. I want to make sure I'm asking whether what's involved in that, because this is such a sensitive site with both developments taking place at the same time. Remember, there's an industrial site on one side and a development site on the other side. Now, I've asked to try and get some understanding around what the build-out programme is because of that. I've also was concerned around footways because I did talk through this before going to them with Catherine, who gave me some tremendous help around this because I was concerned about it and I needed to understand whether my concerns had any validity. So I've asked them to look at the cycleways and footways for this because the build out of it isn't the Gorka end coming on first, it's the section adjacent to the top Angelent. I've also raised concerns that I have, on your behalf, been arguing because it was something that many members of this town council wanted, was Top Angel to have the unlevel road surface repaired. And my understanding is it's a scheme. What my understanding is not when they're going to do it, but I was promised it was going to be in this year. And you'll know when it's finished because somebody else will tell you that they've got it done. And it'll be in Facebook that somebody's achieved it. What I'm saying to you, I've asked her to go back to the building people because what my concern is, if they start the building works for both them sites and that road isn't repaired, it will never be able to be repaired because it will stop the construction of both the sites. So I'm asking for them to look at that. And I'm also questioning whether they've really considered the sewage outflows, because though there is a published intention how to deal with, I understand the documents are around, but with my dyslexia, I sometimes struggle to find everything in short, sharp order. But I've also raised concerns about where the sewage will go, because you will know that during that heavy rainfall, that the sewage system wasn't working very well with rainwater along Meadway, and they did have some loops out of there. So if they think they're going to put it into there, that will only aggravate that situation. So they're the type of things I've been raising, one positive and negative. I hope that's at least gives you some assurance that
Thank you, Robin.
I haven't actually been doing that for a few weeks. There are other things, but I think they can wait, which then brings us to the last item, which is actually on your agenda, which you read, because I know it's time, you can read, which is the response to my written question over the section 106 monies to do with the transport delivery. From there, I think you can read those figures, and what it basically says is in one part spent, another part missed because of COVID and another part partly being done. So what it's a lesson to us that COVID and the bus routes that we anticipated being delivered to go up to Mays Morton to be able to if the money's gone spent and hasn't gone anywhere, which really suggests further to what Anthony Ralph raised earlier about in his discussions about why we should be involved in section 1, why you should be involved in section 106 is at the early stage, because this local knowledge around these things is key to make sure that they're drafted in such a way that portions of money stay where they are. I hope that's okay. If you've got any questions, take them. So I do know that it's 9:30 and whatever.
Thank you, Robin. Any questions for Robin? We move on then.
Can we minute our thanks for the questions that you asked there, please?
Sorry.
Can we minute our thanks to Robin for asking these questions on our behalf?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Everyone happy? Yeah, thank you. Of course, everyone's happy. Thank you, Liz. 11.2 is the Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes Association of Local Councils quarterly meeting for towns and parish councils to receive information, discussion, slides and QA from the 18th of July. Town and parish council planning and environmental updates. You've got those, right? Access. Comment on that. 11.2.2 to note that notification of this meeting was received on Friday, the 14th of July, 4 days before, with registration and written question filed by Monday, 17th of July. Tonight to discuss and agree whether to make a formal complaint and to who. I would like to make the following formal complaint. Although the town clerk was given notice on Friday, the 14th of July, the Buckinghamshire Council Planning and Environment Service update meeting to be held the following Tuesday, the amount didn't issue an invitation to potential attendees until the Monday morning, the 17th of July, with 24 hours notice. Neither I nor my deputy councillor Anthony Ralph were able to attend, both having previous commitments. I asked Cabinet Member Peter Councillor Strachan and BC Services Director Steve Banbrick to be postponed due to lack of notice, but they declined and said that slides would be passed on. Email apologised, Mel was citing a misunderstanding on my part. But this is not the first time that communication between Buckinghamshire Council, Email and Town and Parish Councils has failed. I therefore request that this committee makes a formal complaint to Democratic Services that calling a meeting without adequate notice is contrary not only to good democratic practice, but also contrary to Buckinghamshire Council's own town and parish charter, which provides effective early communication with town and parish councils.
Yeah,
Good.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, second that. If you need a second. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Lisa.
One thing, Madam Chairman, they have amended their constitution around committee meetings to because we complained about the short, if you remember, you only had such short notice to actually be able to put a question in to a select committee meeting, so that it was really quite difficult for town and parish councils to attend a select committee or members of the public. So it might be just checking whether they are in line with their practice on select committees, giving good enough notice, because their council notices of a meeting is in their constitution, and in the constitution, which has been amended thanks to, I should imagine it's Mr. Newton who probably amended it. He's always just the good stuff, just Mr. Newton, he's a good chap. It might be worth checking whether it's whether their actions in itself aren't in line with their own actions as a local authority, and if they're not, that means that Democratic Service is well aware that they're applying a lower tariff of discipline in our meetings to externals as they are internals. And I would think that would be, if that's the process, and it isn't for the cabinet member to answer for that process, it's for the constitutional committee group, which Mr. Newton was on, and I think it would be worth copying this to Mr. Newton, who's councillor, not an officer, who does have an eye for detail, and he's very thorough when it comes down to the way things operate, being a retired prosecution barrister. He's what I call a sharp cookie.
I've just come back to you on that, Robin. This was not a matter for Buckinghamshire Council. They had given adequate notice, BMK ALC, about 3 weeks before the meeting. It's BMK ALC.
It was not, but I apologise.
Yeah.
I misspoke.
Yeah, I did make the point.
I apologise,
that BMK ALC failed to notify everybody.
But the question to be rephrased to Buckinghamshire Council, they apply these standards to themselves, and they should seek to.
What it's called cabinet member.
Yeah, and they get adequate notice to BMK ALC. It was Mel Wolf who got to send it on.
Wow.
And she sat on it for 2 weeks.
So the question, I think that excuse me, that is out of ignorance rather than anything else. Why are they writing to them to disseminate the information rather than to parade to parishes where not everybody may be a member of the council association?
That's how it works. That these meetings are called by, or they're hosted by BMK ALC. I don't know the reason for that, but everything we get comes through them. Never directly from them.
Good point though, because if it's organised, like set up by the Shire Council, then they're like waiting for a third party like to disseminate the information.
This is why I think it's important that we contact Democratic Services. They may say, right, we're doing this wrong.
Yeah.
Particularly when not everybody, maybe it's not every parish family member.
Of course they would have been, wouldn't they?
You don't have to be.
I still think it's worth.
We have to subscribe to it.
Yeah.
Very thorough.
Sure.
Well, I'm an executive member of BNCAL. Obviously, this is a concern. But I mean, my experience of those meetings is that they are very much Shire Council meetings, and parish and town councils like ourselves essentially are expected to sit there and just listen. There's precious little interactivity. Genuine questions are often, in my view, dismissed and not properly answered. So, to all intents and purposes, the meeting is one hosted and convened by the Shire Council, and then to literally onto the ground. And I didn't think we encouraged anyone to do it. I agree. It should be down to the Shire Council.
Yeah.
Basically, their meeting. And I've given up going to it because I don't want to be talked at for an hour. There's no interactivity, there's no parity of respect at all.
It was a very strange meeting because it should have been the quarterly town and parish planning forum. It wasn't.
Yeah,
they didn't call that.
I did sort of say to you, didn't I, that we were missing effectively because we put one with a date set in October. And I was saying, well, the last one was April, well, there should be one in July, and then suddenly out of the way to get answers to actual questions is to send them in as written questions. If you're not told until late Friday afternoon, you can't to do that by Monday.
And we, as regular attendees, Anthony and I, and we didn't get it till Monday morning.
No, it's quite.
I'm just listening to Councillor Harbour's point. We need to establish, before we write that letter, to establish the question of areas of responsibility, because if as Councillor Harbour suggests, all intents and purposes is Buckinghamshire Council, contrary to what you advised me, it's very much a Buckinghamshire Council meeting and those questions have validity. If it's as you advised, they still have a responsibility because they are the planning authority and they're convening this meeting. And it should.
I was probably saying that it was Democratic Services at the Shire Council.
Yeah.
So I think that's fine.
I called on Steve Bambrick and Peter Strachan to delay it, and they declined.
Yeah, I mean.
I think we need to move on, Chairman, because the time.
Yeah, fine.
I've got the correspondence from Mulvey, where she apologises and gives the reason why.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah.
I just don't like it being messed with.
Anyway, so is everyone agreed that we?
Yeah.
we do that?
Great.
Thank you very much. Updates from representing outside bodies.
I'm going to say good night, Chairman. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Good night.
Buckinghamshire Council Committee
Safe
meeting.
driving.
The two North Bucks Area Planning Committee meetings, 26th of July, 23rd of August, both cancelled. Strategic Sites Committee on the 3rd of August cancelled. The next select committees are scheduled for Growth, Infrastructure and Housing Select Committee, 23rd of September, and Transport, Environment and Climate Change Select Committee, 14th of September. Enforcement, to report any new breaches. Anyone have any? Okay, thank you. Item 14.2, to receive information on the issue of an enforcement notice, 14 Church Street. This is opposite on Jackie Hall. Without listed building concern, the unauthorised installation of plasterboard internal subwalls and ceilings and accompanying insulation throughout. The owner has been told to permanently remove everything within 4 months of the 1st of September.
Well, this is on Datchy Hall.
No, opposite.
No,
On Datchy Hall.
right.
Yeah, it's the house in 14.
Yeah.
It's next to it all.
Yeah, next to it, yeah.
It's very fine.
Yeah. It didn't come through that one didn't come through us, so someone else obviously.
Yeah, let's not notice the.
Oh, right.
You were interested, what is it?
Rolling list update for all attached appendix D, E, F and G for tree felling, land grabs, calling requests and IMO licenses. Yeah, Catherine, thank you very much for those.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine.
All noted. Matters to report. Any damage to purpose and done signage in the town, access issues or any other urgent matters? None tonight.
No, and to reiterate to get one of Green Space's team slip for the Paragon sign thing on the roundabout. That's the only.
In the action list.
Yeah.
I just wonder how long the keep right sign outside the just by the pedestrian crossing by the tea rooms. There's a cone, isn't there? And there's a keep right sign. It's been there for over a week, presumably because the drains collapsed or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long it will be before they actually do some reparation there, rather than just leaving a cone and a sign sticking out.
It's probably because they have to get the utility to do their own repairs, which is why the one up Stratford Road,
Yes.
which is dire. And it's getting worse.
Yeah.
That's an angling water.
Ah.
It's not something that has been doing.
That's how we do
Another one, by the access to sunlight.
Right, well, there's also the one by.
Well, go home that way.
Yeah.
We'll phone them together.
Not recognized, sorry. Anything back to that, Frank?
Right.
Anything else, Fred? Chairman's items for information. I have none to report. Date of next meeting, Monday, 18th of September. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks very much for that. Mark, deputy chairman.